As you've heard, today is part 4 of our 4-part series. So in the first 3 sessions, we laid some of the groundwork on where to start, how to build and grow a youth-led entrepreneurship cooperative business. And today we're gonna get into some fun financial management talk. And here once again is our agenda. We will have ample room for questions, so please drop all your thoughts throughout. Emily does an expert job at moderating, and I can't wait to see our discussion to come. So if we are new to you, I'm so glad we are getting to connect today. We are a nonprofit cultivating the well-being of our communities through creative programming in kid-driven gardens. What this means is since 2008, we've been applying our unique brand of gardens, science, art, healthy living, and community building to our partnerships with schools, community organizations, kids, families, and neighborhoods that may not otherwise have access to green space. And we put our mission into action through our 5 program areas. We have an early growers program, school garden partners, youth entrepreneurship cooperative, which we're highlighting today, our community green spaces, and our trainings and resources program. And at City Blossoms, we say our programs build a pathway. So from ages 2 through 19 and beyond, we have various touch points for youth to get connected to nature and sustain those holistic connections to their well-being and the outdoors, and maintaining that curiosity and excitement through programs that age up and down with them. And then the last little introductory note is where we came about how we got here today. So the Youth Entrepreneurship Cooperative Program, henceforth referred to as YEC, because that is a mouthful, it grew out of a series of questions. What would happen if young people were able to start, manage, and grow their own environmentally driven business? What would the impact look like on the community? Could the work of running this business support the development of new skills that could be useful beyond high school? And staying true to these questions, there began a series of seasonal projects at Eastern High School, and that first group of youth staff ended up naming their business Mighty Greens. And at City Blossoms, we are intentional about creating a clear distinction between our YEC program and the Mighty Greens business. So this is a business run, led, managed cooperatively by our high schoolers, and this allows City Blossoms to continue to share out our youth entrepreneurship cooperative model while also letting the youth staff have their sense of autonomy, their sense of ownership over their work. And with that, we'll get right into the content of our manual.
Awesome. Thank you, Jillian. So this is, as has been mentioned, the 4th of a series of wonderful sessions. And today we're going to sort of dive a little bit into managing finances with youth. So once you've sort of developed a basic understanding of the foundation of your YEC-like program, and you have a sense of like what you as an individual or your organization has the capacity to handle at this current moment, it's time to sort of dive a little deeper into what sort of managing that day-to-day components of your program, such as like meetings and where money is going, how you're talking about money, the things that you need to have in place before you start earning money. So we're going to get into sort of the nitty-gritty of some of that. And there's a lot to think about, so please don't hesitate to ask those questions if anything needs a little more clarification so we can help support that a little bit. And yeah, we're really excited to be here with you all. Jillian, I'll pass it off to you.
Fantastic. Yeah, so a great place to start in this financial management conversation is to be explicit about why a cooperative model. So I'm sure we're all gathered because we understand, we believe that entrepreneurship creates space for youth to explore their interests and cultivate power skills and also generate income for their work. And our YEC program specifically draws on lessons from a long history of cooperatives that communities created when they did not have access to resources and wanted to build their own independent wealth. And the cooperative model has a long-standing history of being a powerful tool for communities of color to address racially biased economic discrimination in order to create strong and resilient community-centric economies. And as we built this program, we found that books like Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nembhard were rich resources, and obviously is just a start. We continue to collaborate with local experts and connect with folks running mutual aid organizations to really sustain this community-centric model of organizing. And the cooperative model allows for youth staff to participate in a way that works for them, their families, other interests, and it lends itself to just collective decision-making, a sense of ownership, and a lot of flexibility, which high schoolers, growing whole persons need. And this model also just emphasizes cooperation, empathy, compassion, and more. And all that good stuff allows our youth staff to really just show up as their whole persons, and no one person is too insignificant to contribute. And that is at the heart of the YEC model.
Great, thank you, Jillian. So as you start to get a little deeper into how you're making money with your youth-led business, I think choosing the right venue for your youth at the time, at sort of where you're at in your program, is really important. So sort of thinking about what makes sense when, and making space for youth to really reflect on the venues that they liked, they felt successful at, they felt comfortable at, and what products make sense for them. And that space, that sort of discussion and reflection will be really key in making sure they have the space to make decisions around markets. I think starting out, if you're sort of at the beginning of this business and playing around with different things, experimenting with a really wide range is great. A lot of our programs started selling at their school sales. So each high school had like a holiday market or some sort of like various holiday events, or sometimes a Mother's Day sale that took place already at the school. So it was a great way for youth to have a chance to experience sales. It's also a really great way to do outreach, because the youth were having this opportunity to sell the product that they were making, and then they got to sort of connect with other youth, and they saw what their peers were doing and became more interested in being involved. So that had sort of a multifaceted benefit. And then another place to explore is sort of the nearby markets. I think, at least for us, transportation of the products and making sure youth can get to places safely is really a sort of a challenge, a logistical thing to figure out. And so if it can be a nearby market within the community, that will be really helpful in terms of ease. And it's a great chance for youth staff to sort of connect with other entrepreneurs, so sort of networking, getting ideas from other more experienced businesses on how to run things, how to do things, that opportunity to like talk to those people and ask them questions when there was like space for that. Sometimes often markets have fees associated to make sure they run smoothly. We've found that in general, the youth staff, because they're running a youth-led business, can get those fees waived. So potentially a good idea to ask if you don't have the budget for a market fee at that time. Another thing that's been really helpful has been like reoccurring community events. So again, another chance for youth to be seen as experts in their community, have a larger network of people who know about their business, who are interested in their business, as well as contracts. Contracts have been a really great way for Mighty Greens, at least, to bring in a lot of business without that sort of guaranteed business that they can plan around without having to spend hours at a market without necessarily knowing if they're going to make any money. And figuring out those contracts have been a really great way for youth staff to really hone some skills around communication, around planning. So for instance, in the spring when our youth staff tend to grow seedlings, they have set up contracts with schools, with a food bank who is interested in running sort of seedling planting workshops. So the youth staff developed this contract where they both taught a workshop on how to grow seedlings, and also as a part of that contract we're able to sell some of their seedlings at a price that worked for the food bank. And sometimes they also just do donation contracts as well. So it changes from year to year depending on what the youth staff are interested in, what seedlings they're growing, etc. But definitely something to consider, and opens up a whole new range of skill sets to sort of work on as well. We haven't explored this, but we've often been asked about online sales. And so might be interesting if that's something you have capacity for working on. For us, that's been a little bit difficult to navigate with shipping. So we are not doing it just yet, but who knows what will come. Definitely something worth exploring. And then once you've made the money, you can start talking about it. And I'll pass that off to Jillian.
Yes, decisions. Talking about the day-to-day, of course, an integral part of running a business would be holding business meetings. And kind of the one of the central themes is that clear communication is key. So early on, the role of the City Blossoms program manager is to help model a facilitator role and set the youth staff up for successful business meetings throughout the year. So in the previous sections, we talked a bit about setting community expectations and how to talk through those ground rules, and that carries through here into business meetings. So in general, we suggest holding them regularly for about 30 to 45 minutes. And it also helps to have a set agenda with, a standing rundown of upcoming events, sales reviews, budget, financial updates, an inventory check, and, other day-to-day things that'll come up. And after, the early meetings are modeled by a facilitator, that facilitator role will then transition through the youth staff. So they will run their own business meeting, of course, in the cooperative model of business. And having these routines in place, having set expectations that everyone is aware of, really makes it easier to slot into that facilitator role and to help different students feel empowered to step up and step in and lead. And I was able to sit in on a Mighty Greens business meeting just before break as they were preparing for our upcoming winter holiday markets. And some things that came up there, they obviously went through the inventory. This year, we've got salts, we've got teas, we've got body butters from them. It's great, a great spread, but they sort of talk through what they think will sell best at holiday markets, what they need to increase inventory on. And the hot topic of the day was whether or not they should invest in a heater for their winter markets. And although the bundle up camp almost won out, but the yays in the end, the democracy was in their favor, and they decided they will not freeze at this year's winter markets. But just seeing that decision making and that group collective thinking and action is really great. And just holding these spaces for them to practice these skills is super valuable.
Fantastic. That leads perfectly into managing money. So once you've sort of gotten the basics of your business down and are starting to think about how you're making your money, definitely thinking about how that money is going to be managed is key, and what profit sharing is going to look like. These are some of the questions that we feel are important to consider before you think about taking something like this on, so that you really have a sense of what it's going to look like to manage finances with a youth-led business, and what you really have capacity for too. We've built this program over more than a decade, and so it looked different when the youth-led business first started than it does now. And I think that's just like a really important thing to center when we're thinking about something like this. So asking ourselves where the money goes, some of the basics, if there's startup money. I think if it's possible for youth to have startup money when they start a project like this, whether it's actual money or some sort of resource to invest in their business, is key, because that will give them that boost to really start their business and be able to create a product or service where they can get their business off the ground and start making some of their own money, and then they can reinvest that in the business. Again, if that's resources that you have on hand that the youth can use to really get their business going. And then once you're starting to make that money, where does it go? The business is going to need somewhere to keep its cash. So if the money that the program makes lives within your organization's checking account, how are you sort of tracking that money and making sure that it's a really transparent process that the youth are a part of? You can also consider like a separate checking account where the youth keep their business money. The account should obviously be opened under a legal entity's name. So for instance, with City Blossoms and Mighty Greens, what we did after a period of time was open a separate checking account, and that's where all of the Mighty Greens money goes. But the checking account itself is under City Blossoms, because we're recognized as a legal entity to be able to open a bank account. And this has been a useful tool because youth sort of have a little bit more, it's a little easier to get a sense of how much money is in their account. It allows for them to review bank statements and get to see what that looks like. But I think whatever option, and there's, I'm sure, lots of other options, whichever option you choose, just making sure that you're creating a clear pathway for youth to be a part of tracking that money, making decisions around that money, and really having the opportunity to learn how to manage money, because that's kind of one of the big points of a program like this. And then once they start getting to make money, the youth will have to think about how they want to reinvest in their company. So like any company, in order for your youth-led business to continue to exist and provide services or products, you need to reinvest some of the products in your business. So you should collectively sort of decide on a reasonable percentage of the profits that makes sense to reinvest, that feels comfortable, and make sure that's a group decision, and that there's like a clear expectation and transparency around what that reinvestment looks like, but also what the profit sharing looks like. So how is that money being redistributed and at what frequency? For Mighty Greens, the youth have decided to reinvest 20% of their profits back into the business. And that money is money that the youth get to make decisions with. They get to buy things like supplies to continue making the products that they feel like make sense for their business to continue making, but also for things like a heater that they're going to bring to markets, as Jillian mentioned, or t-shirts with their logo on them. So getting to think about how they want to utilize the money that's being reinvested. And then who pays for what? That's been a really important thing for us to navigate. Again, I think throughout all of this, especially when you're dealing with money, transparency and communication are key. So chances are your youth-led business is not going to be able to pay for all of the expenses that come up, especially at the beginning of their business. And the point of this program, at least for us, is to really create an engaging experience that's filled with learning opportunities and safe space, and is accessible to students who have a full class load and outside obligations. So we want this to be something that's really accessible to the youth who are running the business and not have a lot of barriers. So clearly defining what those materials are is really important, so that the youth can really make decisions around how they want to spend the money that they do have access to, and make really informed decisions. So for example, your organization might be responsible for the cost of like essential program supplies and staff time. And then the youth-led business might be responsible for non-essential program needs. And so that might be like t-shirts or stickers, or one year the youth decided to buy a bunch of temporary tattoos with their logo on them. And that was like one of their branding things that they decided was like a good way to use some of the money that they had access to. So I think just, again, creating that clear decision-making tree and sort of clear communication around the money and who's paying for what has just helped to make sure that everyone knows what they have to spend and how they want to make decisions around that spending, and really understanding managing cash flow and how they're making those decisions has been super important, and has led to a lot of really rich conversation. So next is paying youth. This has definitely been one of a big learning curve for us, and we're continually learning, and I'm excited to hear from others who do this work, because I think there's lots of best practices to learn from, and I continue to learn and hope that we can tweak the methods that we are paying youth with. I think giving youth any amount of money comes with a lot of responsibility. So it's important to figure out how to pay youth in a way that works for them, works for their families, and also works for your organization. So if you're paying youth, be ready to have those conversations around like financial safety and providing tools on financial literacy, and being really consistent about communication with both youth and parents and guardians, so that there's not a risk of miscommunication or people not understanding when money is coming their way. There's lots of different hurdles that come up around paying youth, especially, and I think they vary depending on your community. So you're going to know best, but make sure that you really have a sense of the things that will impact your families and your youth. So for instance, you should know if you work with a lot of families who maybe don't, if like some of the youth aren't banked or unbanked youth, so that you can support them and provide them with the tools that will help them make decisions that work well for them. And understanding what communication tools work best, whether you write a letter that goes home with families, whether phone calls are better. So again, you're gonna know the youth and the families that you work with best, but making sure that before you start paying, you have answered some of these questions for you. And also, since some of the youth that you work with may be under 18, it's particularly important that if youth are getting an amount of money that's going to impact the taxes of the adults that claim them as dependents, that you're communicating around that, you're providing resources and maybe access to organizations that support with free tax clinics or something like that, so that everyone has the tools they need that for this to be a positive thing and not something that causes a lot of hassle. We currently pay youth with checks at the end of the season. So Mighty Greens makes a certain amount of money, and after reinvesting in their business, the youth are paid out based on the number of total hours that they put into the business. And so each season, an hourly rate is calculated based on the youth's profit that season and the total working hours the collective put into the program. And then each youth staff member who put in the minimum number of hours, which is typically, depending on the season, between 20 to 25 hours, they then get paid out a stipend that's based on how many hours they put in. And that's worked well for us. Often in the summers, when we have a more consistent group of youth for a longer period of time, it looks a little bit different. But definitely in the end, financial literacy has been key when we're paying youth, and has been what we've learned from best practices from other organizations who are paying youth, so that it happens well and there's lots of communication around it. I'll keep this brief so I can pass it off, but definitely a few lessons learned. We at certain points have experimented with a lot of different things because it has been difficult to figure out paying youth. We did prepaid debit cards at one point, which was a better alternative to cash because it was safer, but it came with fees. And then we also, when we first got started, paid youth via gift certificates, which was great as a first stepping stone because it allowed for the youth to get paid without having to navigate some of the more challenging aspects of paying youth, if they didn't have access to a bank account or if there's a safety issue. But it didn't really allow for youth to save their money. So we eventually figured out how to move in the direction of checks, but that might be a good alternative if you're just getting started and want to be able to pay the youth in some way. All right. Yeah, definitely ask questions. Happy to share more on anything. And I'm going to pass it off to Windy City Farm, and I'm really looking forward to getting to hear more about their program.
So my name is Samantha, and I am the Community Education Manager for Windy City Harvest. And I can give you a little introduction of myself, but I also like Kenya and Paola to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paola Ramirez. I am the coordinator for urban agriculture education here at North Lawndale, Chicago. Nice to see you all.
Hello, my name is Vera-Sample. I am an urban ag educator here with Windy City Harvest, Chicago Botanic Garden.
All right, so Kenya is working our slideshow. So a little background about Windy City Harvest. Our program started actually out with our youth farm, and that was 20 years ago. So we're actually celebrating 20 years this year for Windy City Harvest. And like City Blossoms, there was definitely a entrepreneurship in the very beginning of our youth farm. And it was really about growing food and engaging youth and having them be a part of what it looked like to actually have a farm. So our first original farm was in the more of a rural, like urban setting outside of the city. And that was our first farm, and it's in Waukegan. That was an acre. And so that farm was originally how the whole part of our youth farm started. As it grew, we added on farms actually in the city of Chicago. So the one that Paola runs is here at North Lawndale at our hub at Farm on Ogden. And then Kenya runs our larger site in the city, which is in Washington Park. And that site is about a quarter acre, no, 3/4 of an acre, and the North Lawndale is about an acre. So these sites are really urban, they're in the city. And one of the things that really got us in the very beginning was just getting youth to be in the space of being outdoors and getting into doing the work and like growing food and introducing that, because the farms that we have located in the city are primarily in underserved communities. And so really touching base with youth on how that looks for them, really engaging them for just the fact that just food access and understanding food policy and the process. And so that was just the beginning. When we started moving forward with Windy City Harvest, it grew. And so really now what we are mainly doing is a workforce development program. So we highlight all the areas that we have here, like our prescription box program or allotments for our community members, and Youth Farm is here. But we also really work on our transitional jobs and our apprenticeship program, which is how we teach anybody over the age of 18 to, I would say, become an urban grower and understand that whole process. And then out of that, we do teach entrepreneurship on a higher level where we have a farm incubator. And that's how it grew. So when we started really looking at the next phase of Windy City Harvest and our youth farm program, which is what I'm back here now. So I started in 2008 with this program, and I left for about 12 years, and I came back and really came back to a program that had to rethink itself, because right now in the city of Chicago, we have several programs that are other organizations that do the same work. So what can we offer youth differently or in a way that would give them access to something different? Because right now, in a lot of the other organizations, we have more of access to programmatic needs or money. So we're actually, in a way, in some cases, we're very funded where we can get buses and take the youth out of the city. So we started really looking at how could we expose them to more of nature, to expose them to understanding the skills of teamwork and understanding the skills of working together on the farm, but also exposing them to things outside of the city. And so really coming back to, because our hub, which is a farm in Ogden, it has a market on the inside. And so originally when we did run the youth farm, each site had their own farmers market. And right now, all of our produce is being aggregated and sent here to the farm in Ogden to be sold to the community. So all of our 13 sites that we have within the city of Chicago, and that including our 2 youth farms, all the produce goes into our market or into our wholesale markets and sell. But mainly the youth farms are for the market here. So what we teach the youth is that all the produce that we're growing on our sites is coming into our market, and they understand that the market here is being ran by staff, but they also understand that what they're growing and what is being produced is being sold directly to the community. So they understand that there is like a direct line between what we're growing for the produce here on the farm and that it's going directly in the market. So if they're here especially in the summertime when we're here and we're really busy, they can see like how busy the market is and the folks that are coming into the produce to buy produce from us. And so they understand that. We explain the fact that we have a sales goal to them and understand that the farm is producing this amount of food. So they understand that there's a direct connection between what we're growing and where the money is going for our produce, from our produce. So I love the cooperative model because that really got me thinking, like, in the sense of how the youth could really understand that. And I'm taking some notes on that. But as for our staffing, just making sure that we have enough staff, because really what we do is grow. And so the youth are really so we have like the amount of staff to the amount of students is really important with us, because not only are we engaging them in growing food, but we're also engaging them in just their development as people, and there's a development as youth. So understanding like their social emotional aspects of themselves, also engaging their groups with one another. So they're broken up in crews, and then each week they're elected leader. So that person is in charge of the tasks of the day. And so really having them understand what their needs are during the week, and they will execute that. And so when we think about how they develop, we also think about what we can give them. So in all of the things that we do for educational aspects of it, we really broke it down to these 4 educational pillars that we're looking at. And so we talk about food systems. We definitely have a whole nutrition health side of that, which I believe that most farming programs do, which is to me is very important. And then we also talk about food policy in the sense of like food access for community and what that looks like, and understanding that they have a say in what we have to eat. And so even though we don't think about that, but the process is that they can understand that when you don't necessarily, when you go to the grocery store, there's things that are there that you purchase, but you can ask if there's other things that can happen. Because here at our market, if there's something that that a customer wants and we're able to purchase it, we end up buying it for the community. So it's not like, and it's not like anybody can't do that. So we also say to the youth that they should be able to advocate for themselves in that same way. And then the last part of it is the career paths. So looking at all the work that we do, how we do all the work, where do we go with that? And then leading up to if they really want, and we've had some youth go through our apprenticeship program, but then also some youth were like, oh, I don't really want to do that. But then thinking about the science part of what we do, or the area of when we're talking about the nutrition and health, we do a lot of on-site cooking. So there are culinary programs talking to youth about what the, like matching up each aspect of what we do to a career and a pathway for where they can look at. So because some people, young people really think of like, oh, I really need to go to college. And we've had young people that have come through here that not necessarily was their fit for themselves. And they were able to really look at their life and decide that, oh, I really like cooking and I'm going to go to culinary school. Because I've had youth that I had work with me here that did not necessarily go to school for like secondary school. They actually went to trade school and they went to culinary school. And I think when they realize that they have that option outside of that and that exposure to new things, then that for them to actually take that leap. And next slide, Kenya.
Okay, so to touch on a little bit more in depth on our pillars and what we really try to specialize for our students. So like Sam said, we are located in the west and south side of Chicago. I am on the west side in North Lawndale, and Kenya is in Washington Park on the south side. So a lot of our students have not had access to a lot of green spaces or even know what urban agriculture looks like or that it even exists. So a lot of our focus is really trying to get them outside and see what urban agriculture looks like. And like Samantha said, a lot of times they're kind of apprehensive or they're kind of nervous or they don't even want to touch dirt or soil or bugs or whatever it may be. But by the end of our semesters or seasons, you can see that they really warmed up to it and really understand that farm to table system. So gaining that understanding of how fruits and vegetables even grow. We have students who don't know what a tomato plant looks like or how a tomato grows. So it's really amazing seeing that process from, being not having any exposure to urban farming and then being able to plant it and grow it on their own. Yeah, you could go to the next one. Thanks.
Okay, so I really think that one of our most unique features is our partnership and work that we do with the Lawndale Christian Health Center, as well as our nutritionists, dietetic interns. That has really just made a really big connection for our students when they are literally working hand in hand with people who are actually in different career paths. So they have a really one-on-one intensive experience where they're literally able to ask questions, feel more in a comfortable environment. Usually we're cooking and talking through these things. I thought a really great example last week, Paola and our young people were making tamales, and our new HR person, Rocio, I'm sorry, Rocio. She is our HR person. So the question we asked, especially when you're talking about a career, your future, how will you make money? Are you in a business? What are all these things? We asked them, do you know what HR is? And they kind of were like, no, we don't know what it is. So it was just a really great collaboration around food, to have conversations about the future and those career paths. So once a week, our teens prepare lunch for everyone in the building. Again, getting to deepen their connection to the community. They have all kinds of connections to different varieties of positions within our retail space, our dietetic interns, our directors, our growers, our farmers, just the whole gamut. They're able to really have those touching points. I've mentioned the dietetic intern collaboration. We use ingredients straight from the farm. We cook inside and outside of the building. We had a lot of fun with aquaponics because we did a harvest of fish from our aquaponics system. We literally just took the fish off the grill, out of the tank, cleaned them up, showed them how to gut it, scale it, and then put it on the grill. So the cooking builds community while learning new skills. That is a clear description of that with that aquaponics example. We also are really into our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we cook things from Thailand. We visited an apothecary in Chinatown in which students were able to make a tea out of reishi mushrooms and gojis and use all of those teas, and have that as a learning experience about different facets of urban ag and how that economy is working. We introduced, as I mentioned, to different cultural foods. India, we did butter chicken, we did collards and turkey tails, we did pupusas, we did tamales. So we really try and make a great effort with our team.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenya. So the next pillar that we usually try to focus on is policy. Sam kind of touched on this a little bit, but we want to kind of remind students or bring to their attention why it's so important. Our locations, also West Side and South Side of Chicago, these are food deserts. These are communities that don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And this is why a lot of them usually don't even include these things in their diet. So kind of bringing them aware of why that is and how there are other communities who are fighting for this. And this location, Farm on Ogden, is pretty unique in the sense that there aren't a lot of fresh grocery stores in these communities. So for example, we did a case study on Flint, Michigan, where we focused on the water crisis and saw how their community was being severely affected by environmental injustice and why that was. And a lot of our students, it is shocking and very sad. So bringing that awareness to them. Another case study we did was here in Chicago. A lot of our factories and industrial areas are in the South Side, which causes a lot of health issues for many, many years. So these are kind of the policies that we review with them. And we also have policies within our own group. We do group agreements and community standards that they help make up. So there's a picture of it on the screen. So one of the things that I thought was kind of funny was good food. So they kind of highlighted that that's something that was important to them. So we tried to follow their lead in some sense and show them that they also have say in how we do our programming.
Okay, so career pathways. Well, just to give you a little bit of a background, I have been farming since 2008. I'm a mom of 6. And so it was really important for me to figure out how can I get my children into different environments and, create all of these different things. And farming kind of was just the answer for me. It covered everything that I needed, teaching a new skill, and ultimately that landed me into a position here in Chicago where I was able to actually have my own farm. And then from that, working with partners in our urban network, I was able to take a herbalist class, a couple of classes, and then I was actually able to develop a product of tinctures that I specialize in growing elderberry. So those are kind of our first-hand one-on-one experiences that we love to share. And with our staff here, we just really have a wealth of knowledge in all kinds of spaces. We could go on and on and on about it, but with our career pathways, work experience, and enterprise entrepreneurship, first work experience. So we really want to show them how to really navigate, advocate, and be successful within their first work experience. For many of them, that this is that work experience. Then we also introduce them to several areas of the food chain. In our food chain system, those are all areas of career paths, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. So we start right from the ground with what is that relationship? What does a farmer make? How much land does he need to be successful? So we share numbers with them. For instance, that on 1/4 acre, a farmer should average at about $130,000 a year. And then we break all of that down with crop planning, our SOPs, showing them greenhouse management, on and on and on.
So here's a little sample of what our daily schedules look like. During the school year, we see them twice a week, on Thursdays in the afternoons and on Saturdays from 11 to 4:30 p.m. So we try to incorporate a lot of like fun and then work. So we usually do our work crews are 2 different crews. So we have a cooking crew on Saturday and our farm crew. We do rotate these crews just so that all students have an opportunity to cook, to get their cooking skills and have those interactions that Kenya was talking about. And also our farm crew, which is doing the outdoor work or indoor work in aquaponics if it's applicable. So yeah, that's just a little sample of that.
Okay, so here we create a sustainable program for youth. We look at our program's greatest strengths and uniqueness. We look at our program highlights. We look at our program challenges and our program recommendations. All right, Paola, take it away.
So some of what we think is our greatest strength is our longevity. Like Sam mentioned, we have been around for 20 years, I believe, right? So I think that's testament to our dedication to our youth and the reason that we've been around for so long in this community specifically. Our programming, we do focus a lot on our curriculum. We try to touch on all those pillars that we mentioned earlier in every single day that we see them. We try to do our outdoor, our indoor, our community builders, and we try to do as much as we can so that the youth get the most out of our program. We have good resources. We have a lot of networking opportunities. We have our horticulture therapy, aquaponics, production, retail. So if there's any time that our students want to ask a question about a specific area in our facility or in our program, we go directly to that person and ask them and show them that it's not they're allowed to ask these questions and they are allowed to be in any of these spaces if they are wanting to. A lot of exposure, so we do a lot of city navigation. So students sometimes don't know how to take the bus or the train, or they've never been to a certain area in the city just because they haven't been able to, or in their life they haven't had the opportunity to go. For example, we have amazing museums here in Chicago, like the Field Museum of Natural History. We try to make it a point to bring them to these institutions and show them that they belong in these spaces and these spaces benefit them as well. We do a lot of science education. So we've done ornithology and mycology, so like the study of birds, the study of mushrooms. A lot of times our students don't know of these different areas in science, so it's nice to introduce them to them. And a lot of them might have these hobbies in birding and foraging or whatever it may be, and outdoor skills. So learning how to navigate an outdoor space, a farm, or use different types of tools as well. And exposure to different careers, which we'll touch on a little bit later as well, but pathways to higher education or alternative careers within urban agriculture, sorry, if that's what they are interested in.
All right, so youth farm highlights. Of course, our cooking, we have this amazing community kitchen that our students, our teens are able to actually see other graduates from our program, other participants from our program. They actually have the ability to see them on their career path where they have literally formally been in the program and now they're creating programs on their own. One of our really strongest programs and assets to our space is our community kitchen. So it really has a great impact because food really brings people together. It gives people an opportunity to kind of relax, feel comfortable, feel safe, feel, a time where all the stress can kind of be shut down. It changes the environments for the students. So it really does, do wonders with the cooking and the kitchen here. We visit world famous institutions. I think one of the great things that we did this year is we within our network to other farms, Urban Growers Collective out of Growing Power with Erica Allen and the Urban Growers Collective crew over there that was able to have our teams go to another farm, see other teams, see that they're interested in the same thing, so that now the isolation and feeling like this is something so new takes on a bigger exposure. It's showing that it's just not you here, but this is something that's expansive and reaching across our city. So that kind of really goes into our agricultural networks and introducing those different networks. One of my favorites is Lori. She is our horticultural therapist, and so she comes in from Team Nutrition, and she comes in and she's done a wonderful pumpkin planting project and activity with our students, where we had all these pumpkins. They were able to carve them out. We made pumpkin seeds, but again, it's introducing different facets that they don't necessarily encounter in their daily lives. So we really try and bring that unique highlight to us as well, to our teens. Practice independence, cooking, transportation, exposure again, encouraging outdoor hobbies, mycology, ornithology. We also have done etymology, we've done botany, we've done the study of trees. So getting them out, literally having a tree identification key, being able to go to the Morton Arboretum. Many of our teens have not had those kinds of experiences, and not until they have those experiences will they truly realize that that is a part of who they are. And I think that's the big important thing here, is connecting them to these new experiences so that they can find out how multifaceted they are as young people.
So some of the challenges to our program is recruitment. Like I said previously, a lot of our teens have never been in these sort of environments. And I know sometimes urban agriculture, or even the word agriculture or farming, doesn't sound appealing to a lot of youth, so which is understandable. So really getting advertising it for what it is, and advertising it to as many communities, as many people in this community, especially youth, is super important. So we try to advertise a lot in our very own retail store here, which is how we get a lot of our students, which is nice because their families shop here and then they also work here as well, which is a great opportunity. Another one is our partnership. So we are with After School Matters, which is an organization here that does a lot of after school internships for youth. So sometimes working with a company like outside of our network can be tricky, like with timing and pay, because they provide the pay for our students. So it could be confusing sometimes. So we're definitely always working on that. Another one is similar programs. So there are a lot of farms and agricultural opportunities here in Chicago. So trying to be unique and advertise it to the right people as well. And lastly, we have no online component, which can be deterring to a lot of youth. They are not looking for programs that are in person or that meet as often as we do. So having 100% in-person program could be challenging. So we might be looking at online components for those who don't want in person.
Okay, sure. I'll do this really quick. This is our basic pathway. Many of our youth come into the youth farm. That's their first level of exposure. Here you see a beautiful picture of who is now one of our managers, Katara James, who originally started off as our youth farm participant. So that to see her walking around, and we really like to kind of, highlight her with the youth. It really makes that strong connection, and they're like, wow, I see this young beautiful young person who has gone through the program, and now here they are, successful and really making an impact in our community. Let's see. And so then they have the entrepreneurship. We literally had the instructor from our entrepreneurship program come in, talk about what happens in entrepreneurship. The next thing, they also can go into higher education. So we have things where we are exposing them to what happens in college life, and giving them examples of that. Then we also offer them just what is the career that you could possibly have. Would you like to come back into other programs? And how would that work? Then lastly, in our entrepreneur enterprise, we have our incubator. We've had our incubators come in, talk about the work that they do. And it's all shows that how it's all truly connected. We are connected to nature, nature is connected to us, and we are connected to each other. So we have just a few areas there, which we look at vision, we look at exposure and resource. And just quickly, with our program, we do an activity of entrepreneurship. If you could only imagine, I'm going to say this as quickly as I can. We have a hat. In that hat, we have several things: peaches, plums, oranges, cucumbers. Students will then select out of that hat. From that, we then teach them how to write a business plan. Okay, so what would you name your business? What is the business solving? You know, things like that. So that's basically our activity, and we ultimately write business plans with them during the summer. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Windy City Harvest. It was great to hear from you. We are going to transition over to Alexx from East New York Farms.
Okay, cool. Just for the sake of time, I'm gonna summarize a little bit about East New York Farms Youth Program. So I'll start out with myself. Hold on one second. Okay. So my name is Alexx. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the farm manager for the East New York Youth Farm. East New York Farms has been around since 1998. I am a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I've been knowing about the program for a couple years now. I'm a land steward, urban farmer, seed keeper, herbalist, and medicine maker. I'm also a youth advocate and educator. So a little bit about East New York Farms. We have 3 sites: East New York Youth Farm, which is half an acre growing space. We have Pink Houses, which operates out of NYCHA, which is a housing development in Brooklyn, which they also have half an acre. And then we have Fresh Farms, which is a community garden where people from our local neighborhood are able to garden and grow their food. So our mission is to organize youth and adults to address food justice in our community by promoting local sustainable agriculture and community-led economic development. Some things about our youth program is we hire over 30 young people. So our youth program is very intensive. It's about 9 months. The youth start in February and end in November. So we're still actually have youth coming in today. I have a workshop with them, a seed saving workshop after this call. But yeah, our youth are very hardworking. We hire youth from our local neighborhood in Brooklyn, so that encompasses East New York, Brownsville, and Bushwick. So the youth that we hire, we do a lot of outreach to our schools in the neighborhood, and that's how we pique the interest of young people. We try to hire people who are interested in like agriculture, science, and food justice. Once we hire our youth, they're placed in different groups. So my group specifically is farm education. So farm education encompasses learning how to sustainably grow food, learning about like food access. I teach a lot of like indigenous farming practices. So like a lot of like crop rotation, seed saving, things of that nature. Just kind of like building a relationship with the land and just allowing youth to explore like from seed to harvest and even to like product. And I'll touch on like the products in a bit. The other group is called Market. So the farmers market that we have operates on Saturdays. So we have a permit from the city to close down the whole block where our farm is at. And we have like local vendors from our neighborhood come by and sell produce from their gardens. East New York, Brooklyn has over 80 garden spaces. A lot of those garden spaces were empty lots back in the 50s and 60s. And then, community members got together and they like revamped these spaces and like took ownership of them and like, saw the need of like lack of access to culturally appropriate foods in the neighborhood. So that's how East New York Farms came to be back in 1998. There's also the compost group where our young people learn about compost, soil health, and they also go around our neighborhood collecting food scraps. We have the community engagement youth, which they engage in the community by doing like outreach to the schools, doing tabling events, and things of that nature. We also have a group, the first years. So our first year youth pretty much get placed in all aspects of the farm. So they get to learn about like different programs within the farm, and they get to decide later on as a returning intern which area that they want to focus on. So our youth farm teaches our young people a lot of leadership and marketing skills, community engagement, and working at the market. So they get hands-on skills at dealing with money, uh, customer service, and dealing with like community members and things of that nature. The youth also lead workshops. We teach them. So we have this thing called I teach, you teach, and then you teach back. So my job is to teach them several things about like workshop building and like things around like farming. And they get to teach the younger ones, like the first years, those skills. And then sometimes they get to lead like community building workshops. So like we open the farm to the public and people can come and like learn about different aspects of the farm. They also do a lot of like leading volunteers. So we have volunteer hours on Wednesdays and Saturdays where folks from the community, from different backgrounds and skill levels come and they engage with our young people, and our young people teach them how to grow food as well. Um, so some of our program strengths and highlights is entrepreneurship as like Windy City, very similar programming. Our youth work at our markets and share table. So a little bit about the share table. A share table is a table where gardeners from our local neighborhood come and bring their produce, and the youth sell it for them. So the young people get to have intergenerational relationships with the elders and like adults in the community, and that's one thing that we're very like strong about. It's just like building community and building relationship with our elders and like folks who have been here and have been doing this work before. So we're very heavy on like that type of relationship, especially because if you think about it, our young people are our future. They're the ones that are going to have to figure out how to like deal with climate change in a couple of years. I mean, it's happening now. So it's a very needed skill to learn about like farming and like education around like indigenous farming practices. So those are like several skills that they learn in our program. As you can see in the pictures, some of our youth engage in like weighing the produce and like taking notes and like the weigh-ins and like adding them up and putting them into our files in our computer. We sell a lot of like culturally relevant foods for our neighborhood. So we teach them about all the foods that we grow, like callaloo, bitter melon, long beans, pigeon peas, hot peppers. So they're very knowledgeable about what we grow, especially when people come and ask questions about the program and things of that nature. This year we did something new. A highlight was my group, Farm Ed. We did a herbalism and value added product um, group where our young people they got to participate in like making products from the farm. So some young people were able to make like hot sauces, seasoning sauces, green sauces, Some youth made salves and some tinctures, all with produce from the farm. And that was a great experience to be able to work with them at that level. This wasn't done before. They were only selling like things that we grow on the farm. So this year they were able to sell like products that they made from the farm. And I feel like that's an essential skill to have, especially with trying to pique like young people's interest in what they want to do in their future. So it was very nice to see that the young people just nurturing from seed to like hot sauce, and see how the growth that they put into their projects. We also, so another highlight is that all the markets are youth operated. So we host Thursday markets and Saturday markets. So this year we had 17 Thursday markets and 20 Saturday markets, which the youth helped facilitated, and we gained about $20,000 in sales, which the money goes back to our program so we can pay our young people for program supplies and just for like just enrichment of our young people. Youth in our program find different interests. I always have this like openness when it comes to young people coming to the farm. I know Windy City mentioned like sometimes the struggle is to get the young people outside. And I feel like just finding like a space for them to do something that it's not always like backbreaking work, but there's always like something to do on the farm, whether that be like seed keeping, whether that be diving into compost and food scraps, whether that be like organizing and making signs on the farm. Like there's always something for someone on the farm. And just like seeing the young people have a sense of ownership of what they grow and what they're giving to the community is also like one of the strengths of our program. Let's see what else do I have here. So things that I would give as an advice for someone who's trying to start like a youth program when it comes to like urban agriculture and stuff is like tons of outreach and education. So we on a weekly basis we reach out to different schools and community centers, and we educate people around like food justice and sustainable farming. We give farm tours, and we tell people in community about our spaces. We're very open when it comes to like people visiting the space and like asking questions and making sure that we have like visible signs and things that will answer people's questions while staff are not on site. I would recommend a lot of like grant writing and making partnerships with fiscal sponsors. We have a lot of like fiscal sponsors, and we have a lot of great partnerships in our community and our city in New York. So we work with a lot of like partners like Grow NYC, Green Thumb, people like that. So we're able to like run our youth program. You need to be abreast to the needs of the community. So again, like East New York is located in Brooklyn. It's considered a food desert, but we all know that, redlining and things of that nature was set up like that in neighborhoods like East New York, where the only thing you see to eat is like McDonald's, or like there's no access to like healthy food. So with that, when people find out about East New York Farms, they become very happy, because a lot of our people that live in our neighborhood are like Caribbean, and we grow a lot of like Caribbean food. So they get very happy to see like all the things that they used to eat back home. So that's just like very impressive to me, how East New York Farms since the 90s have been cultivating young people and cultivating like food and just cultivating community ties with the people around us. You need to be able to engage young people in their interests as well. Kind of just like connecting the dots and trying to like basically meet them where they're at. Because sometimes young people they feel like they're not being heard, but if you meet them where they at with like open communication and just like interest in their lives, they open up and they're willing to like do things that they didn't want to do before. Especially like, for example, I had a young person last year who he didn't want to do anything on the farm at all. He's like, I don't want to see any bugs, I don't want to touch any soil, I don't want to do this. And then this year he became my junior staff, which is kind of like an assistant. And he just like took ownership of the farm. He did so much farm work. And I was just like, wow, like, what is the change? And the change is just like being open and like letting youth do what they want to do when it comes to like work and stuff like that. And just allowing them to give you feedback on what makes them feel comfortable. And also just like keeping in mind that young people learn differently. Some young people are visual learners, even like adults, we're like visual learners, we're hands-on learners, or we need to like hear something before we actually like take it in. So just having room and openness for the ways young people learn. We also do community agreements before every shift with the young people. So some of the shifts look like during the high season, so like in the summer when the youth are not in school, they're here like every single day. They get paid minimum wage the first years, and like the junior staff and returning interns get paid, I believe, $16-17 an hour. I think that's great because some other jobs are not paying young people really well. And, I think it's very important to have programs like these that are paying young people for hard work and things like that. Let's see, you also have to have a really strong community relationship and engagement when it comes to having a youth program. You have to be educating like parents, educating peers, and having people be on top of like what's going on in the neighborhood and things of that nature. Yeah, I think that I hope I didn't summarize it too quickly. Thank you for listening. I hope this was very informative. Thank you, Windy City, for your very beautiful presentation, very detailed and stuff. Your presentation resonated with what we do here in the city of New York. It would be great to like have like a conference or like a meetup with everyone that's doing this work and kind of like, get ideas from each other and like kind of like piggyback and like, just seeing people doing the same work that we're doing here in other states and even in other countries is just very powerful to me. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for having me on this call.
Thank you, Alexx. Thank you, everybody. It's true, your slides have just really transported us to your different sites, and it's been really fun to be transported in that way. So thank you so much.